Once you've ruled out the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
And it is not a question of a little occultism or a touch of mysticism, Mr. Benton. It is vampires. It's a host of damned souls of Pelham House.
I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night.
Here, the old gods aren't dead.
And what of the true god?
He's dead. Can't complain.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Hi everybody, I'm Irene Allen, the host of the Paranormal UK Radio Show, the flagship show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And I'm here tonight with my co-host, Mark Johnson.
So I was waiting for some derogatory name that you were trying to think of.
No, I just forgot yours.
Your stalwart and worthless co-host, Marky Johnson.
No, I just forgot your name again.
Yeah. Well, you know,
I haven't done that for about a few months now.
Not like it's important or anything. I mean, if it means anything, I forget my own damn name half the time.
Gosh, you're my business partner, you're my editor, you're my publisher, you're my everything, and I forget your bloody name.
Yeah, it's called CRS, darling. You suffer from CRS, just like I do.
What's CRS?
Can't remember shit.
Okay, all right then. That's a naughty word.
Oh, we can drop them a few of them here on our show.
Bleep, bleep.
This is not for children.
Only my grandchildren sometimes listens. You know that?
Yeah. Well, a little S word isn't going to hurt anything.
What do you think? When we go out on Amazon and places like that, how many children may actually be listening alongside with Mummy?
Well, then they'll get an education, won't they?
Okay. All right, then. Sorry about that, folks.
Oh, well, I've said worse.
Come on, then. Come on.
Come on, what?
Tell us.
Tell us what?
How's your arm?
Well, today's not so bad. A couple days ago, it hurt. Got my first jab. Mm-hmm. I got to go back in a month and get my second jab.
Yeah. It's 3 months over here, isn't it?
No, it's... Well, you're supposed to get... depending on which vaccine you get, it's anywhere from 3 weeks to a month. You get your second one.
It's 12 weeks over here.
Well... Yeah, so I'm getting my next one in May, and going in, the jab itself, I didn't feel a single thing.
No,
didn't feel a thing at all.
Isn't it?
But then later in the day, I'm sitting here and I move my arm and I start going, ow. By that night, my wife, her arm was starting to hurt, and we're both just sitting there going, ow. Ow. And, really no side effects except yesterday, 24 hours, 36 hours later, I was tired. I felt achy. I wound up going to bed really early and woke up today feeling perfectly fine.
That's exactly how I was. Exactly.
Yeah,
I had aching bones the following day. Very tired. I don't think I got out of bed the following day after the injection. But it's far worse going to a dentist.
Oh yeah. Well, this one you're in and out, and and you're not as much pain.
Yeah, I mean the injection in the roof of your mouth or whatever for a dentist is very painful.
Oh yeah.
This injection in the arm is nothing.
No.
I've said that now. I got my second one next week, and I bet that bloody hurts.
From what I've heard, the second one, the effects are worse. Yeah,
Don't go on like that.
No, well, that's what they say. I mean, I've known a lot of people who've had the second one, and they get very much flu-like symptoms for about a day. You know, they could even run a fever, chills, or whatnot, and then it clears up in about 24 hours, and then you're fine.
Yeah. Yeah, well, like I say, a week Friday. A week Friday, I have my second one, so I'll let you know if that happens or not. All right?
Yeah, but now that we get them, can we like, take the frickin' masks off now?
No.
Then what's the point of getting it? If you're vaccinated and
you may be a carrier. You don't know, do you, or whatever?
I thought the vaccine was supposed
to keep the masks on.
I can get into a whole argument here, but
yeah, but I think just carry on the way we were for a while longer anyway, until they know for definite just how much immunity we've got from this virus. You know, they still don't know, do they?
You know what? The amount that they don't know is just shocking. This is, it's been a year of this now. It's like, I'm sick of it.
Yeah, but you imagine there's a lot of work goes into doing all this, Mark.
Well,
into the scientific side and study of it all.
Yeah, well, I would have preferred to have seen some more long-term studies and effects. You know, a year, certainly 6 months certainly isn't long enough.
Yeah, well.
But we're stuck with it, so.
That's it, and time. We haven't got the time.
You know, if I start growing a second head or if my private parts fall off, then.
I told you the other day you've already got 2 heads.
Yeah, I know, and I only think with one of them.
Yeah.
Now the trick is to figure out which one.
I know which one.
See, that's going to go over kids' heads like...
No, don't you believe it. If my granddaughter's anything to go by, she's worked it out already. So what else have you been doing? What's the weather?
A little cold and rainy here today, but it should be nice by the weekend.
Well, we've had sunshine, but it's been a bit chilly.
Yeah, spring is here. All the leaves are starting to come in. Flowers are coming in, so it's looking nicer. Yeah,
it is. All my daffodils are now dying off in the garden, and I believe I've got to leave their heads on for a while longer to give strength to the bulbs.
Well, now, here comes the most important agricultural question, okay? Yeah. When do the grapes come in?
The grapes should be in by October.
October?
End of September, October, they'll be ready.
That's when you harvest them? And make me my bottles that I haven't received yet?
I tell you what, I was down there the other day. They're not only getting the leaves on the vines, but they're also flowers. The flowers are coming, the little tiny curled up flowers that you get on grapevines. They're starting.
See, I'd be getting...
And each little bunch of flowers that comes on a grapevine is a bunch of grapes.
I've been getting into so much wine lately. I've been trying some Italian versions. There's this one, Guido Butto, a Toscana from Tenuta San Guido.
I didn't understand a word of that.
Yeah, me either.
Italian.
But I ordered it this weekend, and it was actually pretty damn tasty.
Was it?
Yep.
Yeah, Italian wine's beautiful.
Well,
every time I'm in Italy, that's all I drink in Italy is Italian wine.
But that's the thing. There's so many... I'm afraid of Italian wines because they come from so many different regions, and they're not as easy to understand as, like, say, the French wines. Yeah, but even though they come from every region of Italy, they're also all good wines. But it's the grapes. They don't use... I don't understand the grapes. There's so much I need to learn about wine. I love wine. I want to learn how to do it. Hell, I'd own a winery if I could do it. But I still have a lot to learn, so. Well, when you go up into Pontone, you nearly always get offered homemade wine. Ooh, yummy. From their own vines. Yummy. Yeah, and a lemon or two. The drier and redder, the better. Yeah. Well, I'm going to experiment a bit with mine this year because I'm fed up with just plain old wine. I'm going to start putting maybe something like
make it a bit more modern. Maybe put a little bit of peach in there or something in with the grapes. You know?
Try that. Oh. I can lend you my Wine for Dummies book.
Can you?
That might give you some insights.
Yeah. Why? Has it got recipes in there?
It tells how a lot of the wines are made.
Mm.
They have a whole section just focused on Italian wines.
Do they?
Yeah.
I might get that book.
Haven't gotten it yet, to it yet, but yeah, it's easy to read if you want to learn about wine.
Yeah, brilliant. I think I might get that. Well, I'll have a look at it. It must be on Amazon, so I'll have a look at it and see what it's like. I have got a book out there, but I've never picked it up off the bookshelf.
See, I need to have a glass of vino while we're sitting here doing the show.
I got a bottle of water and some grapes.
Yeah.
Squash the grapes into the water. Maybe you'll get something that's similar to a glass of wine.
Maybe have Jesus come down, touch it for you, make it turn into some wine.
Yeah, maybe.
There you go.
Okay, then. So shall we get on with the show?
I think we should. I think we've cackled on long enough here.
And we've got a good show tonight, haven't we?
Yes, we do. We want to welcome our guest tonight, Kerry Greenway. Kerry is... Greenway. I said that. I'll fix it, Kerry. I promise. Kerry Greenway, who's the co-host of one of our other shows here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network, the Paranormal Concept, that she hosts with PAUK, that airs weekly, and
Richard Clements.
And
I have to keep pulling him up, Kerry. I'm sorry about this. And Richard Clements. She co-hosts with PAUK and Richard Clements.
I said that.
Oh, I didn't hear it. But still, okay.
No, I didn't. But I blame the shot. I do. I blame the jab.
Yeah. Yes, I've lost an injection again, isn't it?
Yep. Well, Kerry, thank you for coming on.
Oh, you're very welcome. I feel a bit lost without my boys, though. Not going to lie.
Aw. Well, we'll make you feel at home here.
You're lucky. You got boys. I haven't.
Oh, I'm not silly. I have boys.
No, that's right. You have a real man.
Oh.
You.
Oh, Kerry.
No.
Me?
Yes.
Where?
You said she's lucky to have the boys, and she said you didn't, so I said, no, you have a real man.
I'll have to have a look for him.
Yeah, let me know when you find him. Yeah, unfortunately, Kerry, this is what you're going to have to put up with for the next, hour and a half, 2 hours, so we'll apologize up front. I'm feeling particularly snarky today.
No, he's like that all the time. I just usually ignore him. He'll get snarky or he'll start going on. I'll just get up, go make a cup of tea and come back and say, yeah.
Snarky
Mark.
Snarky Marky. So anyway, Kerry, how have you been?
Oh, I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm glad the world in the UK anyway, it's starting to open up a little bit. Back to work. Yeah, all good. Good. Well, I know when we had our meeting a couple weeks ago and we had our talk and a lot of stuff came up which made me think, oh God, we really should have Kerry on for the show to talk about these things because we haven't really talked about a lot of these subjects before, or it's been a long time since we've mentioned them. So, there's several different things that we're going to talk about tonight, including one which you're very invested in because you have your own store talking about crystals. Yeah. Crystals this is my other side, the side that you don't see on the Paranormal Concept Show. You get a glimpse now and again when we hit a spiritual subject, but this is, my other incarnation, shall we say. And I have an online store. I only run through Facebook, but it's Spirit and Soul Island Crystals, and I've been doing that now for, probably about 7 years. So, yeah.
Now, as someone who I've done a lot of studying over the years, I've done some shamanic studying. I've studied as a shamanic practitioner. I've learned a little bit with crystals, but I'll be very honest. I'm very much a novice when it comes to crystals and what they can and can't do, or which ones do what. I mean, amethyst is my birthstone. I have amethyst. I like it. But, beyond that, I understand that crystals can contain energy. They vibrate at certain frequencies, and each vibration can, bring on different properties. So I was wondering if you can just, enlighten us a little bit on your knowledge of crystals. Okay, so there are thousands of different types of crystals and minerals and rocks out there that you can use. And you're right, they all vibrate at their own frequency. But see crystals as little people. So they all have common traits within their own group, as it were. So say, for example, take amethyst. All types of amethyst will have its baseline energy signature, just like a human would. We all have similar traits as humans. So that amethyst will have similar traits across its board, as it were. However, each different piece of amethyst will have a unique energy signature overlaying that makes it unique, which is exactly the same as a human. We're all very, very unique as humans, but we have various traits that we all have in common. So when you're linking with crystals, you're linking into the unique energy signature of the crystal and the underlying energy signature. Now, when we break down energy work, we look at 4 different areas. We look at mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional. Now, a crystal can help you on an energetic level work with those energy centers to improve situations, lives, issues, blockages, to keep your energy moving. And depending on what you have a problem with, for example, you can choose a crystal that will help you with that. Did that make it clear, or did that turn it to mud? No.
So if you've got a problem or something, you can find a crystal, or there will be a crystal that can help bring light to that problem and give you the answer, sort of thing.
Yeah, it will help unblock that energy center, or it will help that. So, yeah.
Do you understand that, Mark?
I understand that. It's just learning which crystals do what. I mean, I know there are people who meditate holding crystals. I know, but again, I have such a rudimentary knowledge of them. Again, I mentioned amethyst, but there's also quartz crystals, and quartz being such a clear crystal, kind of like a pure light crystal. Which is supposed to have very positive aspects to it. But beyond that, I don't know.
Well, the thing is with crystals is you can pick up a crystal book or Google it or whatever to get the basic meaning. But my perspective of it is you go with what you're drawn to. There are 2 aspects of this. You can go to the one, if you've got a blockage, you could go to a crystal that you're really drawn to that's going to work with your energy to do that. And it could be any crystal. So you could go into a crystal shop and see 1,000 different types of crystal. You're only going to be drawn to a few of those. You're not going to be drawn to every single crystal, and you might get that initial magpie feeling when you walk in the shop. Like, oh, my God, they're all so beautiful. I want them all. But eventually, once your energy center settles down and you get over that excitement of seeing all those crystals, you'll start picking them out, and you'll start going, like that one, don't like that one. Sometimes that's aesthetic. Sometimes that could be a whole crystal of the same crystal, same shop of the same crystal. You could walk into a room full of amethyst and only one piece is going to be the one you go, that's the one. And that's where it is what you need.
Kerry, that's happened to me. There was up at Merton Mills up in London, South London. There was a crystal shop, and I went in there and I was just drawn to one crystal. But I picked up other crystals, but I never felt the same about the others as I did with this one. This one was warm, and there was just no nothing. I was just attracted to the energy of this particular crystal, and for me, that's unusual, you know.
Yeah.
Because I did, like Mark, I don't know a lot about them. I only know what you told me the last time we had a conversation, and there's the protection ones you were talking about, which I found really interesting.
Yeah, certain crystals are going to resonate in a specific way. So, like, Hello?
Yeah, we're hearing you. Go ahead.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, certain crystals will resonate in a certain way, and in exactly the same way as you've got your energy centers that run through your body. We talk about chakras, which I'm sure you guys will have known about. Chakras have colours that are linked to them. Crystal colour comes into it. There's a lot of different aspects of it that play on this. So, for example, if you was dealing with, say, an anxiety issue, first of all, your anxiety, you know where it sits. Some people get massive headaches when they get anxiety. Some people get very tired. Some people get like a choking feeling with anxiety. Some people, it sits on their chest and they can't breathe properly. They hyperventilate. It sits in their stomach, gives them stomach issues. So where your problem sits gives you a colour. So your chakras, you'll know where your chakra colour is. And that can draw you to a specific crystal as well, and the meaning of the crystal. So there's lots of different aspects on this. I could sit here and go, well, lapis lazuli means this, and quartz can do this for you, and blue chalcedony will do that for you, and amethyst can do that. But it's very, very individual. What works for one won't necessarily work for another, because we're all unique, and crystals are all unique. So when you go into a crystal shop, for example, you get that initial hit of magpie feeling. You want them all. They're all pretty. They're all glittering and looking gorgeous and beautifully lit. And it's a psychological magpie feeling you want. But you settle that down, and then you start energetically feeling it. And like Irene said, you start picking them up. You get drawn to a specific one. Straight away, you'll know. You'll go look at a quartz crystal and go, oh, no, I don't like that one. It could be the most beautiful crystal in the world, but you may not necessarily like it, because energetically it's not attuning itself with you. It's not calling to you. There's a flip side to this. Other people say that you should go for the one that repels you the most. When you get a physical response, you're like, oh, no, I don't like that. And that is the one you should work with to cut through fears and blockages. Personally, I like the one where I get a physical response and I know it feels right. That's how I work with them. That's how it's always worked. But as I say, I have spoken to other people, and that's the flip side. That's the other side. Some people will say that. But it is very much that way. It is getting the right crystal that attunes itself with you, like works with your energy, so you can work easily with it. No point fighting an energy force as you've got enough going on inside your little body and brain as it is. You know, half the time we've got our mind monkeys going, and God knows what else. But it would work on any level.
Yeah, but what fascinated me was the way that you said about putting crystals in various parts of the house, which actually balances the house. I thought that was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, you can use them for placement around the home to help the energy flow around the home and sort out energy blocks in the home and stuff like that. And there are certain techniques that, you know, we talk, there's a lot of woo-woo out there, like, you know, house cleansing. Everyone seems to think it's a 5-minute job, and it isn't if you're going to do a proper house cleansing. And then once you've done that house cleansing, you can use crystal placements to put around your house to keep that energy flow and stop any negativity building up in areas, particularly when you live with a family. You know, there are rows or undercurrents and resentments and all sorts of weird and wonderful things go on within a family. And you can use crystals within the house to keep the energy flowing. So although these things happen, they flow. They don't just block and build and become a major issue.
Yeah. Yeah, it is fascinating, Mark. It really is. You know, and when Kerry comes down to me, she's going to bring bags full of crystals down that I can buy off of her, right? And I'm going to have her go around the house putting them all in the right places.
I do that, actually. I've got a friend, and every year, once a year, she has a good clear out, declutters. She gathers all her crystals as a cleanse, charges them all up in the garden, and then she says, come round. And I go around and I place energetically crystals for her, talking to her, finding out what her needs are and how her life has changed. And, you know, we go through a big, long process. And I place all these crystals for her, and she swears by it. And every year she insists I come and do that for her, because she just says, you know it better than I do. It's just how it feels. And, you know, I've worked with crystals for quite a long time now, before I started selling them as well. And even when I go into the paranormal field investigating, I use crystals. So I live and work with them quite a lot, and you get to feel the energy difference in crystals, and that translates into the energy surrounding you.
You know, there's a lot of people, I'm sure, out.
Amazing.
There are a lot of people, I'm sure, out there that listen to this and they think, "Oh, what a bunch of codswallop." You know, how can
they think woo-woo, but it works.
But here's the thing, from a scientific point of view, and I actually took some geology classes in college, and there was a lot I learned. But you look at that crystals, minerals, everything has a vibratory rate. Everything vibrates at a certain, frequency. Crystals vibrate at certain frequencies based off of energy. We, as human beings, are energy. We exhibit energy. It comes out of our pores. It's part of our aura, and that aura can interact with these crystals with the vibrational rates, and depending on the crystal, can produce certain things. I don't believe it's the crystals so much that are doing the work, unless Let me backtrack on that one. I think they do in regards to picking up on the earth energy and the earth's natural energy, or even if you're on a ley line or something, but they also directly interact with our own, spiritual energy.
Yeah. But think about this, right? If you took crystals out of the equation, say we didn't dig them up out of the ground and they stayed where they were, when you walk around in nature, just in nature, you get a different energy feel. Like from when you're in a wood, every wood will feel different. Yeah. You can go to several different woods and they'll all have a different vibe. They'll all have a different feel. You'll prefer one wood to another. Yeah. You get that energy exchange between yourself and nature. Okay? You go out, we talk about grounding. We talk about walking around barefoot so we can connect to the ground, because the ions come through and we can get rid of our negative energy through the ground, with our feet and stuff like that. We talk about hugging trees and that energy interaction between a living, breathing organism. And we don't look at a rock in the same way, because it's not living and breathing and growing, and we can't see that evolution. They are doing that. They're just doing that over a heck of a longer period of time. They're earth-born. We're not talking about crystals that are born in a laboratory. We're talking about crystals that are earth-born, that have been taken millions of years to form in their form.
Yeah, and the basic...
And that is the bit that you're connecting to, and that is why they're helping you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've got to correct you on one thing there. I don't know... Oh, God almighty, does Michael Geddes Ward? Neil Geddes Ward throwing shows into the Dropbox.
Okay.
What was I going to say? You said that we don't look at a rock the same way. And now listen, Kerry, I had a pet stone back in the 60s, and I loved old Herb. I loved him. I took him everywhere on a lead. It made a mess of the floor, but
I've had many things. I haven't had that one before.
You remember people had pet stones? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I don't remember taking them out on a lead.
No, I used to drag it. Yeah. I used to drag it across the wooden floor and things like that, and it'd take all the varnish off. I took my pet stone everywhere. And every now and then when I go to the beach, you're attracted to pebbles and things.
Yeah?
Yeah. You shouldn't take pebbles off the beach in this country, people, unless you can manage to slip them down your trousers or down your top without anyone seeing.
Why?
It's illegal.
It's illegal to take a pebble off the beach?
To take the pebbles off the beach, yeah. It's illegal.
Okay. Add that to the list of everything else that's illegal over there.
Beach erosion, isn't it?
Yeah. Now that's, there are a lot of in rivers too, or streams. You have the rounded rocks over time that are worn down because of the water, and you get the nice rounded pebbles with a lot of crystals in them. I mean, even in the old days, the miners here in the U.S., going out and panning for gold. It's basically they're looking for metals, gemstones, and going into the streams and using the old sluices or the old pans and sifting through it and picking things out. And there's those types of crystals and minerals all around us. Now, crystals, what a lot of people don't understand is they grow. They're like a plant in a way, because crystals are formed naturally. I love when you can break open what they call a geode, which looks like a big rock, but when you crack it open, there's all these crystals that have formed inside of it.
Yeah. It's a fascinating world when you look at various ways of crystal formation, and the different types of rocks. And like you say, we go back to the beach thing. You walk down a beach, exactly the same principle. You walk down the beach, there are millions and millions of shells and stones and rocks and stuff. And you'll only pick up one or two that you get called to. And it's exactly just because they're a humble stone on a beach does not take away the fact that it has an energy signature. Because everything organic has an energy signature. And we utilize that. We utilize plants, and we utilize, in medical healing, medical industry. Look at that. That's come from plants initially. They say that there's a plant on earth that will cure every ailment that the human has. We just need to find it.
That's right.
And, utilize it. And that's where medical started, with using natural remedies from plants and herbs that surrounded them.
Mm-hmm. That's
Crystals are exactly the same. They're just in a harder form. We can't necessarily, ingest them like we can that. You can if you use a gem elixir, but you have to be very careful because some stones are toxic. They've got like copper and stuff like that in them. You can't use that as a gem elixir, disclaimer. But you put amethyst in water, it's a fantastic uplifter. It's an amazing cleanser. Shungite comes from Russia. It's called the detoxification crystal because if it is cleansing. It gets rid of all the nasties that's building up in your body from the food and stuff that we eat. And people drink elixirs that they make from this crystal by literally putting a crystal in water and infusing the water with the crystal energy and then drinking the water, not the crystal, I would like to add. Rose quartz, well known for skincare. Put rose quartz in your bath or in your wash water. It helps to sort out all sorts of skin problems, as we say. We talk about carnelian, great for ear, nose and throats and allergies and stuff like that. Nosebleeds, things like that. You put carnelian in your wash water, wash with it, even hold it on your nose if you're prone to nosebleeds, and it helps sort it out. Medically, can't prove it. You're right. Scientifically, I can't go to a doctor and say, find me the scientific proof here that this works, because he'll go, there isn't any. But people have used these techniques for, ever since humans were able to recognize a pretty rock and have been drawn to pretty rocks. Exactly the same thing. They've used them. They've used them to empower themselves in battles. They've used them to adorn themselves, to show their royalty and their rank. They've used them for protection from all sorts of areas, from psychic protection to protection from an enemy. When you look at the tourmalines and stuff like that. So scrying, they've used them thousands of years, going back to Greeks and Romans, scrying mirrors and stuff like that. That was obsidian that was polished. Even the Native Americans used to use that. So when you start looking at it and when you start looking at the uses of crystals throughout the ages, it's not just about they're a pretty rock. You know what I mean? They have that energy signature. We are drawn to them for a reason. In exactly the same way we can with plants, utilize them for our own well-being. You can use crystals in that way too.
Yeah, it is a very interesting subject. So, Kerry, tell us the website again before we change the subject onto the Fae.
If you go over onto Facebook, which is the only place I'm selling at the moment, go and find Spirit and Soul Island, and you will find me and my pretty crystals.
Well, I'll have a look at that.
Mm.
Yeah, have a look at that one.
I keep it quite low key.
I'll go and pick my crystals out tomorrow, do a bit of shopping.
Oh, that'd be lovely.
Yeah, and now talking about rocks and things in streams and lakes and things like that, Mark, you've got the fairies. And, of course, you've got the fairies that live in the streams and the rivers and lakes.
Well, there's all the Celtic...
So you've got to be... What I'm going to say, darling, is be very careful about taking a rock from a stream without asking permission first.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. You don't know...
You should actually ask permission from anything, like whether you're taking if you're foraging plants and stuff like that, always talk. And this is where people go, oh, my God, it's batshit crazy. But it isn't. Talk to the plants. You know, again, Prince Charles got caned badly because he admitted he talked to rocks and believes in homeopathy. Yeah. But it's about that energy interaction you're asking and gratitude for what you're doing. And that has a lot of things to do with, you know, the elementals and the fae and things like that surround and live in this realm that we then sort of kind of step into to take what we want. So you have to be respectful. Yes.
Very true.
Well, I mean,
right.
I feel like the Aboriginal cultures all over the world are more in tune with these forces and these other entities than a Western society certainly is. Our modern Western society poo-poos all these stories as folklore, and yet you'll have places like Iceland, who they have what they call the elves, the Icelandic elves, and they respect them so much that they'll divert highways around areas where they think the elves live, so as to not disturb them and show respect for them. I know movie shoots who they shoot a lot of movies these days over in Iceland, and they've learned real quickly that when they shoot there, they have to do the offerings and ask permission of the elves in order to shoot there, because if they don't, they start having all sorts of camera problems and equipment problems and accidents on the sets and whatnot, because they didn't ask permission first.
Yeah, very much so. It's respect for the natural beings that are there. Just because you can't see them doesn't mean to say that they're not there. Again, can't prove it. But when you start interacting and when you start acknowledging there's this unseen realm, as it were, that live alongside us but not with us, and they can affect things, then you start paying homage to that, you'll start seeing good things happen too. They're very tricksty. And there is a definition between the Fae, which are energetic beings that have their own sort of like mini world, as it were, a different world within a world, and elementals who are very they're the nature spirits. There's a difference between the two. The elementals sit more on the etheric world. So if you do astral traveling and stuff like that, you'll come across more elementals, whereas Fae will interact on our realm, in our present.
Do you know, I was told by a woman once I was surrounded by elementals. Mm-hmm. Don't I know it?
That they get drawn to the light.
Yeah. They
get drawn to your light. So what light you're putting out, they get very attracted to that. Mm. And if you open your home to them, so like if you have a lot of plants in your home and stuff like that, you'll get a lot more of that kind of interaction through. And the elementals tend to sit more with the elements like the air, earth, water and fire. So if you have a natural fire in your house, like a log burning fire, you can see them play sometimes in the flames and stuff like that. You'll see little flames jump and stuff like that. It's the elementals playing in the fire. And in the air, if you're out in the garden or something, you can tune into the elementals in the air. And I'll tell you a funny story, a little anecdote. I was walking home years and years ago, this was, and it was a gale. It was quite late at night, and it was so strong, the wind. And I was like, enough already, please. Come on, I'm trying to get home.
Yeah.
And I asked them, I said, please clear a path for me so I can walk home. And they did.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
And they did. They made it a lot easier. It's still windy, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't blowing me to the point where I couldn't walk against the wind. I was able to walk against the wind. And another little trick, if you're sitting by the sea or by a natural source of water, then, if you start looking, you start seeing varying shapes under the water. A lot of people dismiss it as light play or, like fish or whatever under the water. But, if you look hard enough, you'll start seeing, again, the water sylphs at play. It's very strange, and you have to tune yourself in. It's like when we talk about mediumship, tuning the radio in the right frequency. If you start doing that when you're out in nature, you'll suddenly start getting glimpses of the elemental world. Fae are a little different to that, in my experience. This is all my experience, by the way. Fae are very tricksty. They like shiny things. That's why things go missing. I've heard people think this down to poltergeist, early stages of poltergeist activity. Personally, I'd put it down to the Fae. They like pretty things. They like to be respected and acknowledged. So if you bake a cake, your first slice should always go to the fairies. You should always put it out in the garden for the fairies. Particularly honey cake. They like honey cake. And milk. They like a little saucer of milk, but don't put it on the ground because hedgehogs might get it, and it's actually bad for hedgehogs. So don't put it at that level. Just little.
Little offerings.
Yeah, little offerings to them, definitely. And if you ask them, they will do something. And again, documentation of stories of people interacting with people they thought were people that were dressed in something that wasn't quite right about their dress. It was probably maybe out of time kind of dress. And it's been put down to a Fae encounter. And you see, you're still getting, even now people report, I think the last one I read was in 1990 where somebody encountered like a little goblin kind of creature.
Well, I found some. This might be it, actually. 1962, a Somerset farmer's wife, told how she lost her way on the Berkshire Downs and was put on the right track by a small man in green who appeared suddenly at her elbow, then disappeared. And the other one I found was a woman on holiday in Cornwall with her daughter came across a small green man with pointed hood and ears. They were so alarmed they ran for the ferry, cold with terror. Mm-hmm. And that was in the 20th century.
Yeah. So people still report encounters with things they can't explain. The Fae will actually appear to you. They will sort of like link into your mind and appear as you expect them to appear. So if you expect them to appear as a man of modern age, they'll appear in that way. If you expect like a little Tinkerbell kind of thing, they'll kind of appear in that way. If you expect a goblin, they'll kind of appear in that way. They'll sort of link into that idealism, I suppose, and appear as you expect to see them. They're very tricksy, though. You don't make deals with the Fae.
No. Don't tell them your name either.
No.
Well, I've got a couple of goblin stories.
Go for it.
Right. My son, when he was about 2, was put in his cot in his room. And every night he would come in to us and tell us about the little man in green that would walk out of the wall and try to get into his cot. And he'd done that every night. And we didn't take any notice in the beginning because we thought, he's just trying to get into sleep with Mum and Dad. But he kept on and on. And even to this day, now he's in his 40s, he remembers it. And he can describe him.
Now here's something to consider. Again, as you mentioned, Kerry, that the Fae can, appear in different forms. depending on what you are expecting. It could also be a form of screen memory. Now, there has been in some cases links or comparisons to the Fae and supposed extraterrestrial activity. And, you know, where somebody will see what they can report as a typical, like, gray alien, but it's not, but there's a lot of other evidence surrounding it that may not exactly be an extraterrestrial or interdimensional of that type, but something in relation to the Fae. Or maybe the two phenomena are much more closely linked than we think. A prime example of is there was a case I worked on here in New Jersey about 10 years ago. And with that case, we started off handling it as a paranormal, you know, haunted house case. Actually, two houses on the same street were experiencing activity. And with that, they the more we researched, the more some things weren't adding up. And it took a while. And this is why I don't agree with paranormal researchers who go in and do what I call a one and done. You go in for a few hours and come out, make your conclusions and leave. Because real research takes a lot longer to understand what's going on in a location. And it took us a few years to figure out and for me to accept the concept that what we were dealing with was not human ghosts, but it was the land that had attachments to it. And I believe it could have been it could have been elemental, but I got more of the impression of something like that, what we would call the Fae. And it was a combination. It wasn't exactly evil or negative, but it did have some negative aspects to it. And I've heard that in a lot of stories of the Fae, is that there's some people who can have some downright frightening experiences with them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. They're very tricksy. They're very protective of their land. And we are expanding across the land, unfortunately. Humans, we are taking over the land and not paying attention to this side of things, really. So if someone come along and built a house on your land, and all of a sudden you start, what they've done? They've ruined my, trees or crops or whatever it be that they were linked with. And then all of a sudden this house has been built. Yeah, I could understand that. I think a lot of stories you hear of paranormal activity where it's linked to, I don't know, the Native American burial grounds is a big one in America. And in England, we have the plague pits. You're built in a plague pit, it must be haunted, kind of thing. Straight away, the assumption is it's linked to that bit. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's linked to the fact that we've encroached on something that was sacred to the fairies and we haven't respected that or shown or gratitude for taking that land or something like that. And they will show their displeasure as much as be nice. They are tricky.
And you know what? Where I live in northern New Jersey, an hour north of west of New York City. And I live up in what's considered the mountains, or big hills as they are here in this part of the country. But it's a lot of forest and a lot of communities up here. But I've learned in the last few years that there are areas all over the place up here that seem to be hot spots for paranormal activity. And yet it's hard to say that it's ghosts per se, because if you can't find evidence of anyone dying there, I'm not up on the whole Indian burial ground thing. Not everywhere is an Indian burial ground. So there's something else that's attached or on the land there. And I'm beginning to believe that is what we are dealing with. I mean, I lived in another house just a few miles from here, little suburb of the town I live in called Glenwood, and it's up on a mountaintop. And not only my house, but I knew of several houses around the neighborhood of people that had activity. I even investigated one of those houses a few years before I moved in. The woman was having some really frightening activity going on there till she learned how to deal with it. And I felt whatever was up there belonged to the mountain. It lived there. And we were the ones encroaching on it.
Exactly. I think as paranormal investigator people, we need to broaden our minds, not just jump to the assumption it's a human spirit that's a thing. Do you know what I mean? That there are other entity forms out there that can interact, like you say, with that sort of thing. You show the right respect and the gratitude, and you learn to live side by side with them. Can't see them. Most people would go, oh, it's, the spirit of, I don't know, Bob, who used to live on this mountain at some point, because they can find somebody who knew a Bob who lived as a hermit up there for some reason. But maybe it's not. Maybe it is something else. And that is what we should be open-minded about, not jump to the assumption it's a human spirit.
Well, you remember I told you I had a house goblin?
Yeah, I love it.
It's a bubakod in Welsh. Translated in Google, it means boobs. Don't know why, but it does. It came up as boobs. Anyway, it's meant to be a friendly goblin that helps out with the chores and things. Can be very mischievous, and can take stuff. But one thing he doesn't like, apparently, is teetotalers. So you'd like this goblin, Mark. I might send him over to you because he likes people that drink beer.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
There is an Irish form of that. There's a story, I can't remember the name of it, but he lived in the basement of a farmhouse where they used to keep all the storage, but it was very mischievous, and the farmer didn't like it and whatnot, and decided to move and not tell anybody. So he did it really on the sly, and as he was moving out all of his stuff, this little, we'll call it a goblin, right? This little goblin decided, no, he's going with them. He likes the beer that this farmer used to make. So he hid in one of the beer barrels. So this farmer moved to a completely new farm and ended up taking the problem with him because he liked the beer. I'm sure that's from Ireland. So these forms have been talked about for centuries,
You've got brownies, you've got hobgoblins.
Yeah, different names, different cultures will put a different name on them, but they're there, they're sorted. They're, you just have to be respectful and, work with them.
It's like here in
there are also sorry, darling, there are also the malevolent ones that lead people into harm.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah.
So, as I say, they're very tricky. You have to be very careful with them.
Jack-o'-lantern and will-o'-wisps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, there used to be an old fear, both I believe in both Ireland and in Scotland, of fairies stealing children and replacing them.
Oh yeah, changelings.
Changeling with fairy children, and that was a big fear for a long time. If children suddenly got sick or they weren't right, they maybe had a disease, but the people thought, oh, the fairies, swapped them out, took their kids and left them with these replacements. Mm-hmm. That was a big belief.
I got 2 of them.
I think a lot of that, though, is superstition and folklore belief.
Yeah.
You believe it so much that, if you have a child that's, I don't know, sickly, and changes quickly, like you have a lovely bonny lad or lass, and then all of a sudden it becomes very sickly. Back in the day, they didn't have the medical understanding that we know now, and they didn't have access to doctors like we have now. Do you know what I mean? So the fae got them. Do you know what I mean? What happened? What did we do that upset the fae? And it was an easy sort of
get out
clause, for them. Child mortality back then was horrendous. So it was that kind of superstition that surrounded the fae, but it showed how closely they believed in these entities. I mean, some of the pagan traditions that we follow even to this day without even realising it, like the Yule log and the Christmas tree and things like that, we're bringing basically nature in and giving them a safe, warm place for the winter.
Yeah, yeah.
So in the spring, when we give it back to the land, they make it lush and give us good, fertile lands and crops for the coming year. Some of these traditions that we follow, we do that now, and we don't realise the tradition behind it or the reasoning behind it. We just do it because it's traditional, right? Put a Christmas tree in the house, Yule log. Now that's a cake when you think about it. Whereas it actually used to be a big log that they would take from the forest, and that would burn over the whole Yule period.
That's right.
The Yule
on
log.
The hearth.
Yep.
Yeah, we make a cake now and we call it a Yule log.
Yeah.
It's made of chocolate. But like we said, a lot of them can be very malevolent. Very malevolent. You've got to treat them right. If you treat them with disrespect, they can turn really, really nasty, and they can cause harm, so they say. And so I've looked up a few things today, and it says never eat food that they give you.
No.
Right? Because once you eat their food, they'll have they'll force you to stay in the land of the fairies, or you'll never be able to eat human food again, not even chocolate.
Yeah.
Right? Never give them your name.
Correct.
Because names hold power. Give the fairy a made-up name or your nickname. Never stand in a fairy ring. Right? A fairy ring's made of mushrooms for you, Mark, that sometimes grow around trees that have died. Because they're portals to the fairy realms. So standing in them is rather a stupid idea. Even if you are not, if they don't teleport you, you can get stuck in the ring, and times move much slower in the ring. Centuries could pass outside while seconds pass inside. Right? Never be rude to a fairy. And I'm sorry about my little goblin, because I call him A-hole every now and then if he gets someone else. But it says, being hospitable, right, and selfish are frowned upon among the Fae. It is critical to meet their standards. Punishments for not doing so range from being pricked with sharp weapons for spying, I quite like that word, to being given 7 years of lameness for laziness, to drowning in a bog for being a bully. Never accept a gift from the Fae, right? Because they'll want something back, like a cheeseburger.
Or your firstborn.
Like and I was quite surprised, really, when I went through the Welsh fairies, how many they've actually got. They've got the Earthlet Long, the Earthlet Dan, a Gobbling Gnat, right, which is like lives in the mines and quarries, a bit like the old Tommy Knockers. The Boobar Cod, which I've got indoors. There's a Grugard Anfunnen, which is a female fairy. Lives in streams and things. Goishong, also a female fairy. There's loads of them. And in Scotland you've got the Banshee. Like in Ireland, you've got a Scottish Banshee, right? And in Highland tradition, she's like she washes by the ford. She's web-footed. She's got one nostril, and she's a buck-toothed hag, and is only seen washing blood-stained clothes when men are about to meet a violent death. And she's a banshee. You've got the brownies and the hobgoblins, which are guardian fairies, classed as guardian fairies. And then you've got the jack-o'-lanterns and the will-o'-wisps. They can be a bit naughty. So it goes on and on, doesn't it?
And again, I've heard so many stories of these things. They're attached to certain parts of the land. We encroach on their territory.
My bloody garden. That's another story that me and Kerry know about.
Well, I mentioned earlier about how sometimes what we can perceive as, UFO or extraterrestrial activity could, in fact, have more of a relation to the Fae. Going back to that case that I mentioned, nothing ever said it was anything other than something attached to the land. But one time, my client wrote me one morning, almost in a panic, saying, "Mark, you're not going to believe what I saw last night. You'll think I'm crazy." And she actually was afraid I would think she was crazy, and it took me like 15 minutes to convince her to tell me the story. And she said she woke up in the middle of the night, and
I remember this.
She saw like a white, wispy figure standing across the room next to her dresser. And she said she must have like made an intake of breath or made a noise, and the thing turned around and looked at her, and she said, "Mark, I'm not kidding. It was and I'll use the clean word here. It was an effing alien." And she described a like 5 foot tall, thin, gray looking alien with the wraparound eyes and everything. It looked like what people describe as aliens. And yet there has never been any recorded alien activity or extraterrestrial activity in that neighborhood or that area. It's all been more in the terms of regular types of paranormal events, from witnessing apparitions to we recorded a lot of EVPs. I recorded EVPs in a foreign language that I have no idea what it is, can't recognize it. It doesn't sound European or anything. I almost think it's Native American. And they would see these dark figures standing in the woods, staring up into the house. And there was a lot that seemed to be happening in the woods right around the house. And it was more than one house, too. There was the house across the street. And I regret it now, but the television show Paranormal State was looking for cases, and I thought, well, maybe, we'll have them come out and look into this case. They bring one of the psychics with them to maybe pick up on something. And long story short, everybody's heard me tell the story before. It was a terrible experience. The production company faked things and screwed over our clients and did a lot of crap that, really showed me how a lot of these paranormal shows are just utter crap. But the only thing that they did, and now it's made me rethink some things, is they brought in, there was a rumor that when the house was built back in the 1920s, it used to be farmland in the 1800s, and around the turn of the century, there was a big fire that burned down most of the town, a lot of the surrounding area. And then in the 20s, they built these housing tracts. And these houses were up on a hill that overlooked the town. And there was supposedly, when they were building the house, they came across human bones, probably Native American. And they were whisked off or whatever, and then everybody forgot about them. So the only good thing this production company did was bring in a ground-penetrating radar team. And they did the entire backyard, and they sent us the scans of the yard. And what's fascinating is there appears to be a large buried ring underground. It's a perfect circle, and it appears that there might be at one point, top of it, a point, something going up into a point, the exact opposite side, something coming out, fanning out, almost like an arrow's going through it. Now, Native Americans were known to make, medicine wheels and circles. But when they do those medicine wheels, they usually put rocks in as spokes and whatnot. And that's not what was here. This was like a perfect ring. And there appeared to be 5 more burials around it. There's these white globs that that were called areas of interest, but when we pressed the radar operator, he told us off the record that those are most likely burials. So something going on with the land. Is it an Indian burial ground? I don't know. But the circle is what intrigues me, because there's not a lot of that out here. In a lot of the medicine wheels were done in more like the western, midwestern part of the country. And out here, this circle under the ground, it makes me start thinking of what you would call a fairy ring. Possible. I don't know. We were never able to dig it up because the homeowner was too frightened. Yeah,
I've heard the story, but I never ever put that together.
I didn't until just before this show. I started to think about it. And then there was one time when author and researcher Barry Fitzgerald, we published one of his books many years ago, where that was based on talking about the Fae, and he was on an episode of Ghost Hunters where they went out to Ireland and they investigated the ruins of this castle. But there was this area in the woods. They had these mounds called fairy raths, which I'd never heard of before. I guess they're mounds or whatever. And they had their team investigating the woods out there, and they were using a thermal camera to film them. And all of a sudden, trailing behind them were 3 or 4 very tiny figures following them in a line. So they were being followed by, you could say, the Fae. It wasn't animals because they were walking on 2 feet, but they were very short, like 2 or 3 feet tall. So I just find the whole thing very interesting.
Yeah, and also in that book as well, when we were publishing it, I remember we were talking to him about the place, was it in Australia, where that little girl got lost in the woods?
I don't think it was Australia. I'm trying to remember. It's been so long.
Yeah. Wherever it was, she got lost in the woods, right? Of course, the whole town were out looking for her. They couldn't find her anywhere. And eventually, this little girl was a bit slow.
Oh, okay. It was in Pennsylvania in the U.S. So not too far from me.
Yeah, you tell the story then.
Well, there is a girl who was with her family, and her sisters were constantly bullying her and beating on her. And I guess the parents and family didn't treat her so well either. They just really were abusive towards her. And she would go out and escape in the woods a lot and hang out there. Well, one time her sisters were after her to beat her up, torment her some more. And as she was running through the woods trying to escape from them, she came across this, what she called
clearing.
It was a clearing, but she came across a woman. But it was this short brown woman dressed in almost like cavemen-like clothes. And it never spoke to her, but it motioned for her to come over, and they sat on this rock together. And then all of a sudden, here come her sisters coming by, and they obviously couldn't see her. And as long as she sat there with this woman,
she was invisible.
She was invisible. And it protected her that day from her siblings. There's a lot more to the story. It's a fascinating read. There's a lot of it I forget. It's been years since I read the story, but that part stood out in my mind. And then it was years later, I think this is the part you're remembering, where the girl now grown up as a woman, I don't know if it was her child or she had a child that was a little slow, and I think disappeared in the woods, and they were looking for her, and I forget the story, but somehow
the woman was walking along, wasn't she? And she saw coming towards her the little tiny lady,
holding
the hand of her daughter.
Yes,
bringing her back to her.
Yeah,
And she was like she was like, she was wearing like, her clothes were like fur, but there was something woody about her as well.
Yeah, I'm looking at the image that Barry Fitzgerald had drawn. It's like, a rounded face with like almost like mouse-like ears, but a human torso with arms and legs, and wearing almost like a fur or something, like shorts or some kind of covering over the privates, and like veiny legs or whatever, and it was a brown color. Now, I know the Cherokee Indians have a story down in the Carolinas.
The Puckages.
Yeah, something like that. Well, they call them the Cherokee Little People. And they're described very similar, short, brown people, and they have a lot in common, a lot of attributes that are similar to the Fae.
Yeah.
Have you heard about those, Kerry?
Not those particular cases, no, but when you think of a more recent thing that's gone on, which is Hellier, they talk about green goblins coming out of a cave.
Yeah, and this is it. Goblins always do seem to be green. Even in Bloomin' Ireland, they're dressed in green. Mm-hmm. My son saw a green little man.
Yeah.
Always green.
It's colour of nature.
Yeah.
Blend in.
That's it.
Kind of camouflage.
Yeah. Camouflage, yeah.
But I also believe these beings, these entities, are able to kind of shift their vibration and become invisible, which is why we mostly can't see them. Whether or not they're slipping in and out of our dimension or not, I don't know.
I think children see them more easier than us.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, children see a lot more things than we do. They're more in tune with nature and the spiritual realm.
Yeah, very true.
There is the story of the Tuatha Danann, though, isn't there, where they used to live on the same...
Go and say that again. Go on, Kerry.
The Tuatha Danann, which is Irish.
God bless you.
They lived... Thank you very much. That lived on the same, dimension, like this dimension with us, humans. Yeah. And then we invented iron. And they were like, no, you can't do that. And there was a big battle that went on, and we ended up beating them because we had iron. And then they had to retreat to a different dimension.
It burns their skin or something, doesn't it? Iron?
Yeah. It fixates them to the spot. So you can't, it sort of like grounds them, which is iron's very grounding, obviously. And it burns because fire's made, iron's made in fire.
This gets us back to a previous discussion me and Kerry had.
Yes.
A lot of the trees that are planted around this house are for protection. Mm-hmm. Was it against the Fae?
Yes. Or would be attractive to the Fae, so it keeps them out of the house and gives them an alternative. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've got hawthorns. The whole house is surrounded by hawthorn, either in the hedges or hawthorn trees itself, which is, and the holly and one thing or another. And the yew tree out there, but also the fact that we have irons, the iron horseshoe, that was for protection and to bring good luck. There's an iron horseshoe out there, and various pieces of iron round this house.
When we were talking the other night about the layout and everything you've got around your house, it seemed very much like it was all designed to keep the Fae around but outside, not inside. When we was talking about it, it's fascinating. Blackberry's another one as well, by the way.
Yeah, I've got blackberry out there.
Let me ask.
Wild blackberries, actually, out there growing. But, I have got this goblin in the house, but he's a house goblin. I know he's there. I know he sits under the stairs peeping out the door. And but like you say, it does look like it's meant to just keep them away from the house but allow them to have the garden, yeah?
Yeah, Very much so. So you want that interaction, but you don't want it to encroach on your life, as it were. So you're giving them an alternative. You're paying homage to them by having the plants that they like and they resonate with. So they're surrounding you. So you're giving them that, and they're leaving you alone.
Yeah. Well, these trees are very old, Mark.
Okay.
You know, they weren't planted by me or anything like that. So this house has obviously been designed for that one reason. Mm-hmm. And also, it used to be the house next to the stream until half the garden got sold off. So the stream actually ran down, it was a big garden, the side of the garden. So this house was classed as the house next to the stream. And, you know, you've got your fairies. Mm-hmm. Fairies that live in the streams, and one thing or another.
What about one thing that has really fascinated me, that because I've had some personal experiences with it, and I've heard a lot of stories, is, you know, and I'm asking specifically about the, you know, the British, Celtic, Irish folklore of fairies, underground, living underground, or even in caves or mines.
Yeah.
That is something over there?
Yeah, over in Wales, they're the cobbling nat. They're called cobbling nat. They populate the mines, quarries, and underground regions of Wales. Mm-hmm. And they're 1/2 metre tall, very ugly to look at, and generally good-natured. And they make a peculiar knocking or rapping sound to let miners know the whereabouts of rich vein ore. Huh. And you've got the same thing in England. You've got the Tommyknockers, haven't you, in the caves?
Yeah.
And in the mines, doing exactly the same thing. But a lot of people think that, you follow the knocking, you're going to get into danger.
Yeah.
Or you're not going to come back.
Yeah, even miners over here, I mean, a lot of the Irish and Welsh miners came over here 100 years or so ago, worked the mines, and they had the stories of the Tommyknockers, and usually it was, negative. He's like, you don't follow them if you hear your name being called. And I've heard a lot of stories about people being in mines or caves and hear their names being called. But I did an investigation once of a natural cave that went...
Cave of the Winds.
Yeah, Cave of the Winds. That went way back in and down underground, down where it was sterile, where nothing lived down there at all, not even insects, nothing. It was like 50 feet under the top of the mountain. No, 50 feet from the side of the mountain, a couple 100 feet down, and we were 1/4 mile back in. And it was discovered in the late 1800s, used as a tourist attraction, but you know what? There was never any stories of anybody ever dying in there. Okay. Even the local Native Americans would not go in there. They considered it sacred. There were spirits in there. So nobody would go into this place. Well, except the crazy white people who, would charge admission and for tours and whatnot and make money off it. But again, nobody died in there. And if nobody lived in there, and yet we had so much activity happening down in this deep part of the cave system. And there was parts of the cave system that went even further back that weren't open to the public. We couldn't get into. But where we were, I mean, we caught a lot of audio EVPs, got a voice saying...
The cave was also shut to the public that day, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just us. Just me and my brother and my nephew. And we got EVPs of voices saying to get out. I got growls. We've got orbs that weren't dust, because they were illuminated and moving, in ways that definitely weren't dust orbs. The one that fascinated me the most was I caught several times bright lights shining out from underneath the rocks and the rock ledges, and they weren't reflections. They were actual lights, pinpoints of light shining out from under the rocks. They'd be there for a minute and then they'd disappear, or then they'd appear in another place. And you could just feel the presence all around you. And again, it just made me think, okay, if we're not dealing with ghosts or human spirits, maybe elementals, but again, my gut feeling was telling me it was something that would be more in line of what we would refer to as the Fae.
Something more tangible.
Mm-hmm.
So these lights, were they like where light reflects off an eye?
Kind of, but they weren't like showing up as eyes. It would be a single light. Maybe there'd be two or three lights. I have the videos of them, Kerry. I'll send them to you later on, and you can take a look at them.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I'd like to see it, because certain rocks will reflect as well, don't forget. So it could possibly...
But here's the thing about it is, and this is where, I pride myself on being a good researcher, is the fact that when I see these things, I try to debunk them. I try to recreate them. And when you can't recreate them, when there's nothing there that's reflective, it's all limestone down there. So it's not even reflective crystals. It's a limestone cave. Actually what I'm doing here, Kerry, and this doesn't help our listeners, but I'm sending you a link to my page that has all of our evidence on there, and you can look at this stuff. But
it's interesting, Kerry. I've looked at it.
You see several of these lights that appear, plus the EVPs of growling. We got a scream. We got faint music playing. We were trying to use one of those SB7 spirit boxes. Now, we were like so far underground, there was no way in hell radio signals would come through. And we started hearing what sounded like old-time band music. And then we remembered that back in like the 20s, the owner of the mine, he actually used to have like bands down there to entertain people. It was really what these old entrepreneurs did to make a buck was really funny.
Yeah. But I think that's amazing though, isn't it? So whatever it was, whatever that was, is pulling this information out and using it. So it's the band music.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The lights, anything to try and get you out. What will freak them out the most? Let's try everything. Do you know what I mean? To repel you, to get you to go out. I mean, the intrepid ghost hunters that we are, it takes a lot more than that. But, normally, if that was like normal, you'd be freaked out, wouldn't you? You could hightail it out of that cave, no problem.
And you know what? Things like that never frighten me. In fact, it just makes me more curious. I'm the idiot who'll stand in a graveyard all by myself in the middle of the night. I'm more afraid of running into a human or a skunk than I am anything paranormal. So I can only think of one time I really got the creeps and was very nervous, and that was when I was investigating Rolling Hills Asylum up in New York State, which is an old poorhouse and alcohol asylum, and it was a little bit of everything over the years. Very haunted. But otherwise, I go into places and they don't bother me, and being in those caves didn't bother me at all. But if it was obviously what was there didn't want us there, especially when you hear the one EVP. My brother, we were wrapping up, and my brother, who's being a little sarcastic, goes, well, we're getting ready to leave. You're going to do something. Do it now. And you hear this growly voice saying, get out.
Yeah, go.
And take your equipment with you.
Yeah. It's fascinating, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you think about it, of all the forces at play, we are quite arrogant as a human race, to think that anything that we can't explain, we jump to the human spirit explanation.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a lot of you know, or we jump to this is the common one at the moment, isn't it? It's hashtag it's a demon. You know, everything's a demon.
Well, it's not so much over here, but down in America, yeah. Definitely, everything's a demon there.
Yeah. It's just a generic term for an entity.
And what is a demon? You know, fairies are meant to be not good enough to get into heaven and not good enough to go to hell, not bad enough to go to hell. So they're stuck here on this earth, well, on this other dimension that vibrates with the earth plane or something or other. So, but what's a demon?
But you know what? We deal with things that are heavily influenced by our culture. So let's say you're very Christian, religious culture. You're taught that there's God is good, and then there's Satan in hell, and he has his demons. And so anything that produces anything slightly negative, it's a demon. It's a demon. It's like, but
it could be part of the Fey world.
But
exactly.
demon is just a different word for daemon. They used in the Greeks. They used to use they called daemon, and daemon was just another word for an entity, and actually in some cases almost angelic. So it was like a general term used for different things, and the Christians come along and changed everything. And the rest they say is history. And unfortunately, you're right. We are so conditioned culturally that we view things like. We see things quite black and white, and they're not black and white. There's a lot of grey there that we kind of miss out through heaven and hell, this realm, that realm. They the Fae, they don't go to heaven or hell. Well, they don't, because they've not got that Christian belief system or that Catholicism belief system there, which came from Dante, the heaven and the hell thing. You know what I mean? When you look at it, you need to talk to Andy Mercer about that one. We've done a show with him on his book on his perspective on Dante's Inferno. And it's just fascinating when you look at our overlay of belief on things that go across cultures. You know, right at the start of the show, you was talking about the different belief systems in these kind of entities that go across different cultures across the globe. You know, every culture will have some form of, and I call them entities because you can name them what you like. Aaron's listed off a load of names that are Welsh. We've got different names in the UK. You've got different names in Iceland and Australia and, you know, all across the globe.
At the end of the day, it all means the same thing.
And even if you go into the Eastern, the Chinese and the Japanese and the Islamics, and, you know, they've all got them.
Yeah,
they've all
the jinn, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And they're all basically, when you look at them, entities that can influence and affect what us humans live in.
And they all have aspects of positive and negative, good and bad.
Exactly.
I mean, just like people, you know, they're just like people. There's good people, there's bad people. This is the thing. One of the things I've been grateful for in doing these radio shows for all these years, and really, you know, and all the research that Irene and I have been doing, expanding our minds to a point to get away from the traditional paranormal investigator view, which I'm sorry is mostly still based on Victorian era ideas of spiritualism.
Totally.
Ghosts and spirits. It's the beliefs came about around the turn of the last century. Yeah. And that's what we still base everything on, with a smidgen of, you know, religion thrown in for it. And we're not looking at the bigger picture of the interdimensional world or the different vibrational frequencies. It's like I always tell people, we can only see a small sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum. What we call visible light. Yet it is so much larger, going all the way down to the infrared and all the way up to the ultraviolet and everything in between. Or when you listen to a radio station, okay, you're tuned in to 95.5 and you're listening to that station. And at the time, that seems like it's the only thing that's there. But there's hundreds of other stations all playing at the same time that you can't hear. Why? Because you're not tuned into that frequency. And I think it's the same thing when we're dealing with these different types of entities and nature spirits, elementals, angelic beings, whatever you want to call things. They're all operating on different frequencies and possible different dimensions. And even modern science now, when you listen to physicists like Dr. Michio Kaku or Neil deGrasse Tyson, and they talk about string theory, and they talk about that they are now starting to accept the fact that there are multiple dimensions out there. And we're only able to perceive this third dimension, at least most of us. There's some people who can perceive more, but most of us, it's only this physical. And what's funny is here I'm knocking on my desk. This seems physical, but when in reality, when you get down to the subatomic level, it's all energy and there's space in between all of the atoms. So it's not even really solid, but that's what we perceive it to be.
Exactly.
Very well said.
Exactly that. Yeah, well said.
Yeah,
well, at least I did something right tonight.
Fascinating topic, though.
And
you can go so deep into it and look at one culture, but then you go to another culture and you see the same threads running through each culture. You've got to start questioning it. You've got to start not being so dismissive. I've said this quite a lot recently on the Paranormal Concept Show. When you listen to someone's story, it's very easy to be dismissive if you haven't experienced it. Mm-hmm. And half the time it does sound crazy. Particularly, when you look at alien abduction experiences and stuff like that, you get into that. And unless you've experienced it for yourself, you can't judge.
Comprehend it.
You can't understand it. Yeah, you can't, and you can't judge the person either. It's 99% of the time you're talking to people that are everyday people that seem quite sane, hold down a job, not alcoholics, not drug addicts, are trucking along quite nicely, thank you. They're normal people who have a abnormal experience that they can't explain and are trying to find an explanation.
That's true.
And, you can't just go in there and go, well, dismiss it, because you have to be open-minded. And that's open-minded beyond the Victorian spiritualism movement, which we still play along to now, or the TV experience that many, many teams seem to follow. You have to expand. And that comes from research and learning from the past. And these themes run through every culture. They might be named different things, but the themes are the same going through. And when you start looking at that and how far back that goes, how can you dismiss it?
That's true. Yeah. Did you know, Kerry, that the oldest record in England about fairies goes back to the historian Gervase of Tilbury in the 13th century?
Wow,
but, it was going on a lot longer than that, because you got all this pagan stuff and everything,
Look, you have things going back probably for thousands of years, but it gets passed down in oral history. Probably in the 13th century was the first time something was, written down.
Recorded, yeah. That's when it was recorded. The first recording of it was the 13th century. But you look at the churches, you've got the gargoyles and things like that. All around the churches. What's all that about?
From what little I understand, the gargoyles were supposed to scare away the evil spirits or the demons, but they look like demons themselves. So, I mean, what really influenced those, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think Paul Rook actually wrote a blog on that once.
Did he?
I can't remember what he said about them, though.
They're fantastic, though. When you look at them, you go around some of these old churches and look at them up there, under the eaves and everything, looking down at you.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic pieces of stonework. Yeah.
Amazing.
Someone looked like my ex-wife once.
What interests me about that, though, the other aspect of that, is they're designed to channel water. So taking water away from the building effectively and get rid of it. And water as we know, is one of the elements, isn't it? So inside, it's all stone and wood, and it's all the elements coming together, the channeling of that energy. And we class it under a church, Christian, Catholicism, that kind of thing. But when you think about it, it brings all the elements together under one roof. And it's pure pagan. And a lot of churches were built on an old pagan, where they used to worship pagan rites to help bring that in line with the new religion. So it sort of like incorporated it within, so people would accept it better and become under the power of the church. It's a fascinating evolution of human psyche and human control and all those factors that we bring in. When you look at it, the journey us humans have actually gone through in our belief systems and our external influences, and how that still translates even now, without us even realizing it. It's just fascinating to me.
Yeah. Okay, so Mark's just messaging me. This is how you bring it up, Mark. Okay, learn.
Okay.
Right.
Well, it belongs to you, not me, so.
Mark's just messaged me about the ring.
Right.
A few words about the ring. Okay, right, carry on, Mark.
Well, first, for our listeners who may not be familiar with it, we actually have a page out on Facebook.
Shh, no.
No? You don't want that page mentioned?
Yeah, he doesn't like it. He don't like it.
Oh, well, we're going to have to change the name then.
Yeah.
Okay. But for
the ring.
For now, and I'll apologize to him, if you look up for the page, the Demon Ring of Amalfitani. But very long story short, Irene is in possession of this ring that she got from a friend in Italy who dug it up a long time ago, and the ring is
didn't dig it up. It belonged to a hermit. Dug it up over here because he buried it next to a church.
Okay. It's been a while since I've heard the story. But the ring, your first look at it, you look at it and you think, oh, it's a devil. Because it looks like what you would think of as a devil. It has like horns, but are curled horns, has a long nose and chin, and it has like almost like ruby ingots for its eyes. And, we've written a lot about this ring. We've talked about it a lot. We've done a whole show on it in the past before, because there seems to be some kind of attachment to it. The ring itself is fascinating to me because it's hand carved. It seems to be very old. We sent pictures to which museum was it, Irene?
British Museum, to get their thoughts. And just based on the photos alone, they thought it was a few hundred years old at least. I think it's a lot older than that. And in our research, we seem to think that because of where it was found in Italy, that it's not demonic. It has nothing to do with Satanism or Christianity. It may have something more to do with the old Roman and Greek gods of Pan, or of it being a satyr. And even those types of creatures are very closely related, if you look at them, to being like a nature spirit or entity, could be a form of the Fae.
Yes.
Now, this ring seems to have an intelligent attachment to it. And it's interacted with Irene on a number of occasions. Now, I know you guys had a conversation about it. What are your thoughts on the ring, Kerry?
I first looked at it and thought Pan when I first saw it. And then we were talking around it. It was very, very fascinating discussion, because we sort of went from where it came from, the Amalfi, through to Greece. And then we found that Bacchus, the god of wine and good living and all that, his sidekick, as it were, was actually Pan. And Pan is linked to the Fae. Excuse me. He's the messenger of the Queen of the Fae. And it is just... I'm going to do a lot more work on it because I just think this ring is absolutely fascinating. It is incredibly fascinating. If it is that, which I kind of think it is, that was my initial thought when I first saw it, it was Pan more than anything else. Definitely,
I'm hoping it's Pan.
It was I definitely thought it was more that than anything else. Then early occultists will work with these kind of entities. So it wouldn't surprise me if it would have been used by an ancient magician of some description. And it wouldn't surprise me if it is more Greek than Roman.
Me either. In fact, we actually did some research where there is evidence that it may even go back to some representations going back to even the Sumerian civilization. And oh God, it's been a while since I've looked at our writings on this, forgetting the name of the deity that it could have been. I want to say Baal, but I don't think that's correct. But again, the whole evolution of the satyr and that's something that going all the way back to Sumerian times, Egyptian times, there's this combination of human and animal elements in creatures where half man, half goat, half man, half tiger or bird. It's always this combination, and the Pan being the human-like face with the horns and the hair coming down. You could see on this ring it has what looks like a beard, and the face is very asymmetrical. If you cut it in half and look at one half of the face, it looks like it's smiling, and the other half of the face looks like it's grimacing or like evil, and it's showing two sides of its character. And in the experiences that Irene has had with it, it has a personality. And again, I'm not saying it's negative, but it seems to be a little naughty. It can be naughty or bring about when you have that compulsion to wear it. Not that you're being bad or anything, but you're a little more outspoken. You're more inclined to be naughty. So, and it brings out something in you, and it's very, very attached to you.
Very attached. And I'm attached to it. To tell you the truth, I really am attached to it. But the Greeks did invade that part of Italy at one time. And
sorry to interrupt there, but the duality that Mark was talking about in the face, we also looked at when we was talking. When you look at Plato writing his plays, would have the two masks of the theatre that we've acknowledged the theatre now. The smiley face and the not so smiley face.
Comedy and tragedy.
Exactly, the comedy and the tragedy. And that seems reflective in this ring, which makes me think it's more Greek than going further back over to Egypt or something like that. Personally, that's just my personal opinion. Sorry, carry on, Irene, because it was just that duality I wanted to
the Greeks did invade that part of Italy at one time. Also, in Pompeii, they dug up a statue of Pan and a goat. What he was doing to the goat, I'm not going to say on the action, but that came from Pompeii, this statue. So we know that they did worship Pan in that area, and there is a particular area down there in Calabria, actually, where people actually worshipped Pan. So could it be from there? I don't know. Could it go back that far? I don't know. I've got no idea. Literally, I've got no idea. Or could it be, like you say, Sumerian?
I don't think it's Sumerian, but I think I think that's where the evolution of the character of Pan may have come from. Just like a lot of the Egyptian gods can be, and even, you know, going into Judeo-Christian, especially the earlier Old Testament aspects of God, there's a lot in there that goes back to Egyptian and even earlier Sumerian times. It's just like how all the Greek gods got their names changed to become the Roman gods, the exact same gods, just with different names. And, you know, when...
Faunus, that's another version of Pan.
Yes, the faun. You know, even Shakespeare used that for Puck in what was that? Midsummer's Night.
That's right.
Midsummer Night's Dream.
Dream, yeah.
Well, anyway, Mark is going to write a book on it.
Well, we are going to write a book on it.
No, Mark is going to write a book on it. I am just going to help out here and there, but Mark will be writing a book on it. So, which should be quite interesting. So he's got a lot of homework to do.
Yes, I do.
So if you can find out anything, Kerry, let him know.
Oh, I will do.
You'll get mentioned in the book.
I definitely will be looking, you know, from my perspective into it, because it just the whole story fascinates me. I'm sure it's called, you know, your listeners' imaginations as well as Mark's.
The other day, I didn't tell you what happened, did I? I decided that I'd take Ronnie the ring from the safe and wear him in bed that night to see if anything happened. Now, I was lying in bed, and I'm a remote viewer anyway. So I wasn't doing remote viewing, but I was lying in bed. I had my eyes shut, and it was like a television shape in my, you know, vision, my closed vision. And I saw my front gates to the drive, and I watched a man walk past the drive. But he was walking in the road. And he walked past the front gates. I leapt out of bed, ran to the window. No one out there. It was just dark. There was no one out there whatsoever. And that really hit home, because I thought to myself, where the bloody hell did that come from? You know, is this a warning or what? I'm wearing the ring. Got back into bed. And all of a sudden, a gust of wind, as if someone had left the front door open downstairs. It had blown up the staircase through the bedroom door, my bedroom door, which wasn't open anyway, it was shut, and turned and went across the bed. You know, it was just like a gust of wind blowing in through the front door. But there I am laying in bed, the bedroom door was shut, and this gust of wind came from the right side over to the left, right across me to the window. And it didn't do it once, it done it twice.
It never ceases to surprise me that when people's perception of an attachment to an object, they think that the entity is permanently there.
Yeah.
They're not. They're energetically tied. So they can go off, but it'll be called back. So you're wearing this ring, he's being called back, and he's telling you he's coming.
So what about the gust of wind then? Is that my
He's
little...
arriving.
Yeah, gosh.
So you see him coming up the door. You go, oh, there's no one there. You get back in bed, and then you get these gusts of wind, yeah?
No, I looked out. No, what I saw in my vision was the front gates of my drive at the end of the drive. They were old wrought iron gates, double gates.
Mm-hmm.
And a man walked past them. A man in modern clothes walked past them, actually on the road.
Yeah. He's coming.
And I thought to myself, it was strange at that time of night. So I dived out of the bed to look out the window.
He can't come through those gates, they're iron. He's got to come a different way.
Yeah, you're right.
I didn't think of that before.
He's got to walk past the gates.
All iron gates.
You've got to walk past them to get somewhere else to come through, to actually come. You're wearing the ring. Oh, okay, I can interact with her. She's wearing my ring.
That's funny.
And then, right now, the window's on my left side, the door's on my right side, right? Mm-hmm. The door is closed. From that direction on my right side, this gust of wind blew right across me.
So from the doorway?
From the doorway, right across me towards the window.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple of seconds later, it done it exactly the same thing again. It came from the right, across to the left, right across.
You know he's arrived.
So
Not in.
I took the blood. To tell you the truth, I took the bloody ring off and I chucked it in a box beside the bed and left it there all night.
So
I've had enough
you
of this.
go to work with it. He's coming. You sort of, in your mind's eye, you're seeing him come. Can't come through the iron, obviously. So it's come from a different way. Then he arrives and you go, no, sod this, and throw it in a box.
Yeah. I wanted to get some sleep, didn't I? I didn't want to be up all night with that thing. You know?
Oh, bless you.
But I've watched that ring. Now, my safe, the safe it's kept on is up on the wall, right? I've opened the safe door and I've watched that ring come flying out of the safe. Now, if it fell out the safe, it would just drop straight to the floor, right? It doesn't. It travels through the air and lands in the middle of the room. I've watched it leap out the frigging safe.
Wow.
What's your safe made of?
Steel. Oh. I don't know. The door is heavy.
It's probably steel.
It's iron.
No, there's not. They're not iron. No, nothing's really made with iron anymore.
Why is it a thick door then?
Because it's thick steel. Keep people from breaking into it. I have one.
Oh.
Depends on how old the safe is. Depends on how old the safe is.
Oh, it's only a few years old.
Yeah. So it would be steel, yeah.
Yeah. It's only a few years old because
still a heavy metal.
Yeah, but it's not iron.
Still a heavy metal.
I'll have to test him out. I'll go and stick him on the spike on the front gate.
Oh, you wicked woman.
See what he does. See if he jumps off of that. But, it's the things it's done on the things that have happened to me and other people that have tried it on. I told you about people reporting the vibration, how you put it on and it's loose when you first put it on and within seconds, even in the middle of winter, it tightens up on your hand, on your finger. It's difficult to get off. I've seen things in his eyes. I've been so, I can't say infatuated, but I can't think of any other word for it. I was studying it one day and I was so engrossed in it. I saw various things in my mind's eye, like film playing out.
Almost like you were scrying?
Sorry?
Almost like you were scrying?
Yeah. And also I've touched it, and it, when you push your cheek in, it goes in, doesn't it? It's all soft, like fleshy. I've touched that ring in that state when it's been like that, as if I can, like it's soft and like your face when I've touched it.
Something definitely unique about that ring.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
it's like it had a softness to its face when I pushed it in, when I pushed against its little cheek. And the carving on it is fantastic. For a handmade ring, it's naive, but every hair is there, every mark. And you saw something on its forehead too, didn't you? That marking on its forehead.
Yeah. It looked like it was the symbol for pi.
Yeah.
Which is a irrational number, which is a number that never reoccurs. So it never ends either. So esoterically it represents infinity. I mean, maths, they call it pi. But that's what it looked like to me, which is a Greek symbol.
Yeah,
that's what I thought when I looked at it. We was looking at this one evening, weren't we? It was just fascinating. And I think, Mark, you were talking about the Sumerians and the Egyptians and stuff like that. It might not hurt to look at the trading routes, the old silk trading routes, and the metals and stuff that they used to bring along the trading routes. It'd be interesting.
Amalfi was a trading town.
Yeah.
Woollen,
and they used to come all the way through from Egypt through and across the Mediterranean that way. Absolutely fascinating. The ring is just I'd love to get my grubby little mitts on it, put it that way.
You will see it when you come down.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's going to come down.
Okay.
I am.
Well, definitely, because maybe somebody can take better pictures.
You can't take a picture of the little devil.
I think you can.
He doesn't honestly, he doesn't like it.
Have you asked his permission?
Focus and...
Have you asked his permission?
No.
Well, I'll try that then.
You should.
Who's the boss around here? Okay.
All tonight, where we've reiterated about respect and asking and working with.
Yeah. So yeah, I should be a bit better to it, shouldn't I? I should treat it a little bit better, But
give it the respect it deserves.
Yeah, but the one thing it does do, it calls. Oh God, does it call? You don't think about it for a month, 2 months, and all of a sudden it's in your head all the time, as if you've got to. You've been drawn to it.
It's like, hello, I'm awake.
Yeah.
What's for dinner?
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was literally drawn to it. I tried to ignore it. And...
Yeah, but if that was a person, an actual person, and you were treating a person in that way.
I do often. Yeah. Ask my old man.
You wouldn't treat a person that way, would you?
You don't know me then, do you, Kerry?
Yeah, she would.
You're calling it by wearing it, and then when it comes, you go, oh, no, go away.
Yeah.
Well, we are actually coming up on the end of the show here. So, Kerry, can you tell people where they can find your crystal site again?
It's called Spirit and Soul Island, and it is only on Facebook. I will say that at this point in time, I only sell through Facebook.
Great. And you're also on the Paranormal Concept Show weekly on Tuesdays here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
That's right, with my boys, Paul Rook and Mr. Richard Clements. Yeah, we cover lots of different topics on that show.
Fantastic.
So love it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight. This has been a lot of fun. We could definitely, I know we could have gone another hour here, but we'll save that for another show. But
well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And I want to just say a word of warning. Don't get your goblins mixed up with your bugaboos.
Very wise. Very wise.
Very wise, yes.
With that, everyone, thank you for listening to another edition of the Paranormal UK Radio Show, the flagship show here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And we will catch you all again next week with a brand new show. So everyone have a great night. And Irene, I'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye, everyone.